Look at this professional bucket. You ever seen a bucket before, bro?
No.
Good.
Never in my life. Dial, dude. Alright. What's up, guys? Welcome to Third Gear Grind. Today, I am revealing the 3.6 swapped GLI Jetta. This car I actually bought off of someone who didn't complete this project. They did all the mechanical work for me. They did the clutch and flywheel, timing chains and guides. Final task was the wiring. Since then, I've been trying to develop a plug-and-play harness that I could sell to anyone who wanted to complete this swap. I wanted it to be as efficient wiring-wise as possible, to use as much as what the Mark IV has to offer for powers and whatnot. I've mostly accomplished that. So it's just a matter of putting everything together, splicing a few odds and ends, and getting the car running. Also, there's a second aspect of the car being crashed. So we have to go through salvage inspections. Now, I have a deadline. I'm trying to make Pacific Waterland in Oregon. I want to drive this car down there, and to do that, step number one is to get it running. Step number two is to get it to pass inspections. Now, I've booked an alignment for next week, Tuesday. Today is Tuesday in the previous week. And on Wednesday, it is going for the salvage title inspection. So let's take a look at some of the things that we have to do to get this car running and what we have to do to get it to pass inspections. So I've got the throttle pedal to do still. I'm not sure if I'll be able to use the Mark IV pedal or not. So just in case, we have the B6 Passat pedal, but we also have a Mark VII GTI pedal, which is said to work. It's got the same style of programming, but this one is a firewall mountable throttle pedal. So here we also have our fuel pump control module. This needs wired in. Now the one that I have here is actually for a 2-liter. So it's not wired in the same way as the 3.6 Passat fuel pump control module, but I'm also experimenting with the 2-liter turbo fuel pump out of the Audi A3 AP. The tune is actually meant for an RS4 fuel pump, which I have. I've got a full Mark IV basket already retrofitted for this, but we're gonna try this first and see if it works, and if it doesn't work, then we're just gonna go find a 3.6 fuel pump control module. Now this is my prototype harness for this swap. What we have here is the 3.6 ECU plug, body harness plug. We've got wired our 2 primary oxygen sensor connectors and our mass airflow sensor. I did this because the mass airflow sensor on the Mark IV is too short to reach the new mass airflow sensor, which is also bigger. The sensor's in a different spot. And then up here, I've done some clever trickery to repurpose some wires and whatnot as pass-throughs, as well as typical functions that are the same between both body harnesses. We also have powering the engine harness down here. This is a T14A connector. It handles a lot of the powers for various accessories on the engine, like the coil packs, the PCV, the high pressure fuel pump power, etc. I've made a T14A adapter that adapts to the Mark IV in 2 different spots. So on one spot, we are just taking what the Mark IV has on every platform, which is our coolant temperature sensors and our speed sensor for the transmission. And we are also taking, I believe, 1 power that's standard on every Mark IV from the T14A to power another power on the 3.6 harness. Now for the stuff that we couldn't power with the Mark IV T14A, I have run fuses in the Mark IV PDM, as I'll call it. So typically these 4 slots are unpopulated. So I crimped on some terminals onto some wires and slotted it in. We are basically going to repurpose our secondary air and our old ECU relay to power up these circuits for the T14A. So under here, we may or may not have to mess with the throttle pedal situation. Hopefully not, but we'll see. My plan is to mount the fuel pump control module under the dash somewhere here, possibly make a bracket, and we're going to use the Mark IV fuel pump fuse, but we need 30 amps of power, and that's only 15. So we're going to add a second 15 amp fuse that's going to slot into some factory spots on top of the relay holder. I'll show that later on. We've also got a bit of mold from the interior from sitting with bad sunroof drains, so we're gonna have to clean all of that out. Yeah. All right, now let's talk about what I have to worry about with the inspection, the salvage title inspection. We got to take these smoked markers out. They have to be amber. There's also no catalytic converter in the car at the moment, so we're gonna have to fix that, and we're gonna put an OEM cap back in. Funny enough, we can't drive this car because it's salvage title. However, they will fail us for rust on the rotors, so we're gonna have to fix that. One thing that's the most unknown right now is the wheel alignment. So on Tuesday, I have to tow this car to a wheel alignment place and get a 4-wheel alignment with the spec sheet indicating that the car meets factory alignment specs. Got to source a driver's side mirror here. That'll be easy enough. And another hurdle is that we cannot have any check engine lights. And that's going to be difficult because we have a Malone flashed ECU, but I don't know what's deleted on that ECU. Is secondary air deleted? Is the post catalytic converter sensors deleted? Maybe, maybe not. The ECU gonna complain about the extra coolant sensors that the 3.6 typically has that we're not running. I'm trying to use just the Mark IV FCM system with the thermo switch. These are things that we're gonna find out. All right, guys, it's Wednesday now. And yesterday, at the very end of the day, had a bit of a debacle. So about 2 weeks ago, I sold my Jetta DSG swap car. Once the car had been paid for, I took my plates off of it, parked it for a week. The buyer came last night to try and pick it up, and the car would not start at all. It wouldn't even try. First thing I started was cracking all the fuel injection lines to try and see if I could get fuel prime again, and it was just not having it. And so eventually, after so much cranking, I kind of looked underneath the injection pump and it was just leaking a bunch of diesel. So today, instead of doing the 3.6, I am working on this thing, trying to get the injection seals replaced, and now I have to get this car to the guy. Unfortunately, he's far away. He lives in Kelowna, so I'm gonna try and meet him halfway. Bit of a blow to the schedule. All right, it's Thursday. Today's a new day. Shop's cleaned up a little bit, and we pushed the 3.6 into the shop. So I've got the new coolant temp sensor installed down there. We're gonna go ahead and install the pigtail. On the 3.6 Passat, the coolant temp sensor only has 2 pins, and those 2 pins give both the ECU and the cluster the coolant temperature reading. Now on the Mark IVs, they actually had 4 pins. 2 sets of pins was for the ECU and 2 for the cluster. So that's what we're wiring into this right now. So much time has passed already. It's suddenly Friday. I've gotten minimal work done on the 3.6, but now we're full throttle on this thing. All right, we're making some steam. Gonna replace those side markers. Mason's doing some cleaning of the cowl. Up here, I've got a lot of the wiring finished. I did my few extra wires that I needed to do and double checked it all. Down here, our T14A stuff is installed. Just gotta tidy it up. And so basically, I'm almost to the point, gotta make a few more splices. We have to put power to the mass airflow sensor. We need to run this wire for the PWM control for the fuel pump through into the cabin. Yeah, we're gonna throw a battery tray down and hook everything up and see what the ECU is saying. So now I just have a bit of work to do on the inside, put some relay panels back together, and we can go ahead and key on, check for codes, and then I can continue to wire the fuel pump control module in the car. All right, guys, so we're closing in on Saturday night here, and basically I've gone ahead, I had everything hooked up, put the battery in, keyed on, went to check for ECU communication. There's nothing. I went ahead and opened everything back up. I did change the way some powers were distributed. Originally my J271 relay was not kicking on, and that's just because of the way the Mark IV gives it power. It only gives it power when the engine's actually trying to run or when the mass airflow sensor is on, whereas the 3.6 needs like constant power to that relay so that the ECU can then control it. This ECU, it's been flashed by Malone, so I don't know if the file is good or not on it. I might try and communicate with it on the bench with my laptop, see if it even communicates or not, and go from there. But I've already double checked my CAN bus connections, my K-line, my ignitions to the ECU, and the main power, which is now coming on with my reconfiguration. So as I explored other modules, I knew this car was crashed already. I went into the airbag module and I found that the crash damage codes were stored. The belt tensioners went off. I need to now source a new airbag control module, because that's bunk once the car is crashed, and I need a seatbelt tensioner. Looks like the steering wheel airbag went off and the passenger airbag, but they've both been replaced. So I'm gonna see, we still have a code for the passenger side one for some reason, so I'm gonna see if it's just not plugged in or what's going on, and then go from there. We're gonna grab some parts from the wrecker. Okay guys, it is Sunday, and went to the wrecker, grabbed some airbag module and seatbelt, so we're gonna put that in. But right now I want to make sure the car passes inspection, and we've got to put on some better tires. So Jaden and I are dragging out my broken 4Motion Bora, and we're gonna swap the wheels and tires onto the GLI. In the Third Gear Grind trilogy, we blew up the Bora 4Motion. We had to drag it out to get these wheels off. Guys, while Jaden does this, I'm gonna be wiring the fuel pump control module, so keep an eye on him. Make sure he doesn't do anything sketchy.
Judging by this image, you can see we had no trouble here. We're not so lucky over here. This car had a wheel lock on it.
And the wheel lock's not with the car.
And the wheel lock's not with the car.
Oh yeah. And
now it's stripped because we tried to do some backyard shenanigans.
Now we're doing
even more backyard shenanigans. And we'll have to do this 3 more times. What you doing, Jordan?
Resulted to the sledgehammer in a triple square that's way too big for the job.
Oh, I caught that on camera.
See, we gotta protect the wheel from damage.
It's a little past that point. Oopsie daisy. Yep. Protecting for sure.
Getting it running rather than swapping the wheel. Oh shit. Alright guys, it is now Monday. Our 4-wheel alignment is 1 day away. It's tomorrow. So it's now crunch time. Basically, what I do have to do today is get the car running. So yesterday was basically a junkyard day. Went and picked up my airbag components, my airbag control module, and the seat belt that I needed to replace. So we're gonna throw those in, try and clear the codes and see if that's all good. I've also gone ahead and installed the fuel pump control module now. So when we key on, we're gonna test that and see if the pump actually turns on. I might be missing kind of an ignition power on the fuel pump control module wiring, but we're gonna find out because I've wired it up like I think it should be. So yeah, when this thing got into the accident, basically the airbag control module has now a code that does not go away, crash jam. It's stored, and you can actually take these apart, kind of reprogram them and reset them, but that's not within my timeline. The easiest solution was just to get a replacement, chuck it in, clear the codes, and see how we're doing. So it actually resides just beside the throttle pedal, so I'm gonna go ahead, plug that in. All right, we're gonna go into airbags. These are our codes here. Oh, we got some crash sensor codes here too. Cleared the codes. Oh yeah, all of them are gone. Excellent. Just kidding, we have some crash sensor codes. All right guys, so we're getting ready for our first start attempt. I went to check on the clutch pedal and it's right to the floor. So the clutch needs bled. The fluid level was way too low. So we're gonna get that done first. We lost our primer relay for the fuel pump or whatever. It's actually built into the 1.8T ECU. That's what triggers that. So when you key on, we're not getting 12 volts to the pump. The thing I did was I bridged the alternator connection. We had already done it up here, but then there's a 4-pin connector down here that has the rest of the alternator wire that goes along the charging harness. So that's bridged up now. All right, we're gonna try and start this thing, see what happens.
Fingers crossed. This is the first attempt. Ho ho! We got no fuel. Yeah, we don't have fuel. Okay, well Jordan, that was the first attempt. It cranks over.
Yep, feeling good. I mean, that's like, it already had that capability, but you know.
And it sounded like there was fuel gonna come out of the cup. It was priming. Yeah, we got fuel.
Oh yeah, dude. Okay.
Turn it back on. Yeah, keep going. It's flushing out a bunch of shit. Okay, hold it there. Ready when you are. missing something.
Alright guys, it is now Tuesday, and unfortunately we missed the alignment appointment. We did try and just push the car on the trailer, and once it was loaded up, I called the place just before we left to see if we would be able to push the car onto the alignment hoist, and that was not the case. They don't have a winch. They expect the car to be running and driving, which is understandable, so we didn't make it. We did try and start it on the trailer, and we took some ether to see if we would get any ignition, and we did. So the car is capable of starting, but for some reason the car is not starting. So what I'm seeing so far, we have that ECU issue where basically I go into it. We have some communication. When we get into the ECU, it doesn't give us the software number, it's just all zeros, no coding numbers, whatever. And then we try and go into measuring blocks, and they're all unsupported or whatever. We can't see any measuring data. Went back to the drawing board and double checked continuity between K-line, CAN bus. Our powers and grounds are all good. Triggers are working fine. The engine harness is getting the power that it needs in every single spot, and yet we're still having this weird issue. So I'm suspecting it's the ECU itself, either the file that has been flashed onto it, maybe not successfully, or something along that. So we are gonna have someone that I know come and help us with this issues and see if we can get it started. We're gonna be running a different ECU, plug that in, and see if we get communication. Wanted to.
I was gonna say it needs more. It sounds like it's starving fuel. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's because it's too low on fuel.
Okay, I'm gonna leave you to it.
It started, but I can hear there's a vacuum leak. It's probably just one of these evap hoses. Alright, we're trying again. There we have it. The thing runs. We don't have a throttle pedal right now, and we're missing a lot of stuff. We don't have coolant. We don't have a catalytic converter for the inspection, whatever. But the fact is the car runs now, so super excited about that. We still have some quirks to sort out in the ECU with the fault codes that are there that are totally not relevant to the car anymore, just unseen body control modules, etc. So, but yeah, as it turned out, the ECU that we had originally with the car just had a bad flash. When we were going into it, we couldn't see software version, anything. It wouldn't even start the car, but we've got this new ECU in here. All I did was plug it in, jumped the battery to give it a little more RPM, and the car started right out. Sounds pretty awful because it hasn't ran in like 7 years, so there's probably no oil in the cylinder head. And I'm not sure if I've mentioned or not yet, but we actually don't have a fuel pump control module in here. I did wire it up, however this is the 2-liter one, so we're gonna have to swap that out for the 3.6 one, because there is one wire that communicates with the body control module that the Mark IVs don't have on the 2 liters. However, the 3.6 one is more rudimentary. It's purely just triggered on powers and grounds and whatnot. So the awful noise went away. Just had to let it run for a minute there. Now it's nice and quiet. Dear Lord, it was pretty jarring. Wow. Okay, so the 3.6 back in the shop. Why is it in the shop? Why is the oil pan off behind me? Well, this thing met its unfortunate demise. Once we got it outside, it started squeaking after we put a bit of load on it. And now the squeaking wasn't really coming from the bottom end, but after I drained the oil, I assumed the worst because of how much metal we found in it. But then once I dropped the oil pan, just to check out the condition of the bearings, I found this shattered guide, and it's shattered into a bazillion pieces, many small pieces. And this oil pan is just looking super rough, and there's a bunch of plastic stuck in the oil pickup, Now, it's not enough to completely block it off, but it's a decent portion. But the real problem was that it exploded in such a fashion that it was a bazillion pieces. And I shit you not, I took this rod bearing cap off, and right there are little plastic pieces. When it started making that bearing noise, I immediately thought, all right, so I took off the #1 main to inspect it, and there's a bunch of plastic in there. It hasn't gone down to the copper or spun, but it's not a good sign. All right, guys, so this morning I took the upper timing cover off, dug into it. So it appears that actually our high pressure fuel pump is out of time. It's 90 degrees out of where it should be at. Basically, I think it got timed correctly, but not at TDC. So now we're at TDC, and I've tried spinning it around 2 more times, and it still is sideways like this. There's a little notch that's supposed to be facing straight up, and you can see it on the left side there. So that's supposed to be facing straight up. Because of that, we were getting a chirping from the fuel rail and the high pressure pump, and it sounded very similar to a spun rod bearing. All right, crank is out, new main bearings in. Over here too, all assembly lubed up. We are reusing the rod bearings. The rod bearings look okay enough, plus they're the coated ones, which is nice. Our rods are kind of just dangling there, so I gotta throw some bearings in them. Hopefully they stay up there while I get this crank in, and then I really got to be particular about putting this stuff back in. Alright guys, so that wraps up part 1 of this video. The 3.6 has been parked out here. It's now running and driving again. We are waiting on some software for the car for the airbag control module and ECU for throttle pedal. But part 2 of this video will basically be getting this car completely finished, driving it, and I'm also going to show off the production 3.6 plug and play harness once that is complete. Thanks for watching!